time to do a bit of armchair travel in Wander the World. And today we are heading north to Zimbabwe, a country that I know some of our listeners have explored in great detail, but many tend to sort of overlook when thinking about planning a safari in Africa. And I've got to confess, I'm guilty of this as well. You think about going on safari, you think Okavango Delta, the Botswanas, the Kenyas, Tanzania. You look much further afield and you don't stop to think that right over our northern border is a wonderful opportunity to go and experience some of the most wildlife-rich areas you can imagine, including the Hwanga National Park. And then, of course, the splendor of the Victoria Falls, something many of you have loved. And to help us explore a little bit more why we should rethink that and consider Zimbabwe on our holiday agenda, it's a great pleasure to have somebody in studio who spends a lot of time there himself, who knows African travel extremely well, and has actually just returned from Zimbabwe within the last couple of days, I think, or week. Garth Jenman is the founder of Jenman African Safaris, which is a family-run tour operator, and it's wonderful to have you with us in studio. Welcome.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Pippa.
Just back from Zim, how long ago? About a couple of days?
I came back this weekend.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So it's hot off the press, fresh information. Yeah. Before we go to Zim, though, just tell us a little bit about your own journey into African travel and where your passion began.
Yeah, short. I won't take up too much time because I can carry on and on at times. But I founded Jenman Safaris in Zimbabwe in the early 90s. I spent most of my time in the 90s in Zim. Based in Harare, and I was doing walking safaris in Mana pools on the Zambezi River, and then traveling also through Zimbabwe into Botswana through those years. And then late 90s moved down to South Africa, and Zim's always been close to my heart. We now have some of our own camps up in Zimbabwe, and we're a full tour operator around Zim. Besides elsewhere in Africa, we also operate throughout Southern Africa. Madagascar is a big destination for us, and East Africa as well. Yeah.
Okay, so although we're focusing on Zim, do keep in mind that Jenman can also take you to other parts of the continent. You've mentioned some of my favorites there. I mean, if you started all those years ago in the 90s, I would imagine, well, has the safari experience changed a lot? What's changed? What changes have you seen in the industry in terms of what people are looking for in the way they travel and what they want from a safari?
I suppose it's using the word upgraded. People expect a lot more nowadays. They obviously, the number one is you're coming for your wildlife experience, but they want to stay in comfortable camps, have fantastic food, exceptional service levels, and that. I mean, funny enough, I was up with my business partner, Mark McAdam, and flying back, we actually spoke about Zimbabwe and what's the next biggest destination that's going to come through in the next couple of years. And we both feel it is Zimbabwe. The investment that's gone into Zim in the national parks, on the private sector, different lodge groups that have got in there. But then you've also got big NGOs. You know, you've got the likes of Matusa Donna and Africa Parks has come in there to look after that. And just the mere fact that there's so many private camps now in the different national parks, we actually protecting the wildlife. We're having private concessions. We're looking after that wildlife. So we're seeing it bounce back. The 90s were definitely the heyday of Zimbabwe. In the 80s and the 90s in Zimbabwe safari experience. People find it hard to believe, but it was the number one safari destination in Africa.
Really?
And we had all these international flights directly coming into Harare. Before Joburg came through, Harare used to be the hub for international flights. So and Zim was the place to come to, which was actually quite overrun with tourists. I remember fondly starting out in my career in the industry. Looking back now, I suppose I was very lucky to be in the hub of the tourism industry, and it was in Zim. And of course, we all know the hard times Zimbabwe's gone through, but it's coming back now. The diversity that Zimbabwe has to offer, I don't believe any other destination, any other country has that to offer that Zim has.
And that's coming from somebody who regularly works in Botswana, in East Africa. I mean, I've been to Madagascar. Diversity is massive, but you still say Zim is number one on your list. It is.
Yeah. It's the people, the service levels, naturally, the service that you get from the people of Zim, but also the diversity. If you go from Zimbabwe, you've got the Eastern Highlands, which is cool with forests and that. Then you're moving on to the lower Zambezi, the likes of Mana pools and the floodplains of Mana. Then you're moving on to Lake Kariba. There's some fantastic options on different levels on houseboating on Kariba that always used to be that's one of the reasons why a lot of us South Africans went to Zimbabwe in the 90s was the houseboat experience. Yeah. Matusa Donna, how I've seen that changed with Africa Parks coming in, opening up the roads, running anti-poaching, restocking the park with wildlife. And then you're moving onto the other side of Lake Kariba, a little-known national park called Chisarira. I rate that as like one of the top places. Not a lot of tourists. You go there, you're going to have it to yourself, but it's spectacular. You're driving through the mountains to get into Chis National Park. Oh. Lovely for walking. It really is. Then you're moving on to Victoria Falls. Now, Vic Falls is absolutely pumping now.
Okay.
It really is. It gets a majority of Zimbabwe tourism by far.
Yeah.
So much so that I almost feel people have forgotten that Vic Falls is part of Zimbabwe. So they will come to Victoria Falls and then they want to go on safari to Kruger, for instance, which is another flight or two to get to Kruger. Whereas just south of Victoria Falls, you've got Wangi National Park, which is a true wilderness area.
Yeah.
I've driven there all day before and you do not bump into another vehicle. That's how expansive it is. And of course, it's right on the border with Botswana. There's no fences. So you've got this natural migration of wildlife going between Zimbabwe, Botswana, through the Caprivi Strip into Angola and then back, following the rains, following the food.
Yeah.
So, and then you move down to just outside of Bulawayo. You've got Matopas and of course, you've got Cecil John Rhodes's grave.
There, yeah.
You've got fantastic white rhino there and black, but the white rhino, you literally could go for a walk. I've been for a walk there in the morning and you're seeing 6, 7, 8 white rhino before breakfast. And then you can move on to the likes of Masavingo, where you've got the Zimbabwe ruins as well and all the history behind that.
I mean, I'm sitting here taking copious notes because already my brain's going ping. I think I need to start rethinking my next year's travel plans. If others are doing the same, or if others are going, yep, been there, done that, he's right, or this was my experience at one of these destinations, we'd love to hear from you. Please do pop through a WhatsApp to 072 567 1567. Tell us which parts of Zimbabwe you visited, what was the highlight of the experience, what you remember most fondly about being there. In terms of getting there for South Africans, Garth, I mean, from Cape Town, are there direct flights or do you go via Joburg? Do most people self-drive for that matter?
So a lot of South Africans self-drive.
Okay.
And I mean, that is something you need to be careful of and you need to plan your trips because some roads in Zimbabwe are okay and some roads in Zimbabwe are not okay. So you really need to talk to someone who knows the ins and outs and which roads to go. It is totally doable. Flight connectivity is the best it's ever been. So pre-COVID, I tend to live in a world of pre and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, I often used to have to fly. If I went up to Vic Falls to get to one of our camps in Wangi National Park, you had to fly via Joburg or via Windhoek. It would take you most of the day. Now we've got direct flights. So you've got Airlink, Kenyan Airways. You can fly directly into Vic Falls or even Livingston. It's actually very easy to fly into Livingston and then you can come across into Zimbabwe. So there's a lot of direct flights in and out. Harare, there's daily flights. If you're living up in Johannesburg, there's multiple flights in and out of Harare. And then internally, you've got the likes of FastJet, where you can get flights around the country. And then the likes of, if you want to get to the camps, for instance, Mac Air and Grand Air, the likes of that, they charter companies, but you can get seat rates to get into the remote places.
Okay.
If you have the budget, I do suggest doing some flights around Zimbabwe. It is a massive country, but you can drive. The year before last, I went with my family and 2 other families. We flew into Harare. We hired 4x4 Land Cruisers with pop-up roofs, and we did the back roads all the way around Zim. My mission, which I think some of my friends were rolling their eyes at, but my mission was to do the back roads and keep off all the national roads of Zimbabwe. So we drove into Mana Pools. We went to Chitaki Springs, which is unbelievable and wild. That's at the escarpment at the back of Mana Pools. We then drove on to Kariba, and most of the group actually got on houseboats that day. And then a couple of us guys, we took the boats across on a ferry through to Matusadonna, and we drove from one side of the park to the other that afternoon. We hooked up with the houseboat that had come across. After 3 nights on the houseboat, we also then stayed at Chiserera, and then we drove around the back roads. So you've got to be quite adventurous around the back roads through to Chiserera. We spent a couple of days there walking, was magic, and then onto Wangi National Park. We also camped there as well in Wangi National Park, and then we ended off at Nanchwich, one of our lodges in the north of Wangi, and then we did Vic Falls and flew home. So that was a 3-week trip. It was magical.
What a gift!
It really was. Yeah.
Just for anybody who's come in midway to this conversation, my guest in studio, Garth Jenman, the founder of Jenman African Safaris, which is a family-run tour operator, operates all over Africa, but we're talking specifically about the wonderful diversity that awaits visitors to Zimbabwe, perhaps one of the underdiscovered, experiencing a bit of a rebirth after we all know the problems it's had the last couple of decades, but really on the rise again. And I'd love to hear from those of you who've been already about what you experienced. Now, Keith asks, are the ruins still in good condition?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. In terms of diversity of budget experiences here, I mean, obviously there are private lodges. If you've got the budget, as you say, to fly everywhere, that's fantastic. But not everybody travels on that kind of budget. Garth, if somebody wants to have a relatively affordable holiday for the family, any tips to share on how to do them on a constrained budget?
Dennis, it's definitely self-driving.
Okay.
Look, I've got to be frank, Zim is not cheap. It is a dollarized economy. It is, most things are imported from South Africa, so you've got to expect to pay more than what you would pay in South Africa, but you will be blown away by the experience. A little tip I can tell everyone is if you look online and if you look, for instance, our brand up there, our sister company to Jenman's called Hideaways, that's what has, and we've got 2 lodges in Wangi and then 1 in Mana Pools. You're going to see dollar rates or euro rates, and you'll probably fall over backwards. But we do have SADC rates. So if you contact us, and there's other companies as well, if you contact them, invariably they do have SADC rates that they won't publish, but you can get into the camps at a much more reasonable price. But of course, if you're self-driving, if you've got your own vehicle, and you can take a lot of things in with you, then that is going to be, you just need more time, but that's going to be the most economical way of doing so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Vic Falls, I know your experience of the falls themselves will differ from one time of year to another. Garth, one of our listeners asking, what's the best time of year to see the falls with the most possible water going over?
So the water comes through after the rains.
Okay.
So this time of year now, it is very good. And then as we head back towards the rainy season, so our rains start in November, December, and then carry on through January, February, March. But then the falls, obviously the water's coming through the catchment area up in Angola and Zambia. So the water comes through the system later on. So the best time of year to go to Zimbabwe is, look, our peak season sort of starts June, July, all the way through to September, October. October can get quite hot. And then when the rains come, it actually cools it down. I quite like the likes of November and December. It's not like it's raining all day. You'll have half an hour rain and cools things down.
Okay.
But so your hottest time of the year traditionally is October. We are, like everywhere, the climate seems to be changing, and I've just come back now from Zim. It was incredibly cold. It shouldn't be cold.
Yeah.
It's normally June, July. You have about 6 weeks where it does get cold in the evenings. It's still warm during the day. But now with this cold front that hit South Africa, I happened to be up there, and it was freezing. It really was. But now it started to warm up already. So it is unpredictable. We've just had the best rains ever that actually even rained through to June, which is phenomenal for the parks. We needed it. But the wildlife experience, we're sort of lagging 2 months behind.
Okay.
So this year, the likes of September, October, I think are going to be phenomenal. And then with this El Nino coming through, the predictions are that we're going to have a couple of dry years, which means next year is going to be phenomenal. It's actually going to extend our season. So that the likes of April, May, June, and then going through to November, December will be very, very good for wildlife. And then, of course, your peak time, June, July through to September will always be very good.
We've got a voice note in from our listener Sharon, who has had an experience of visiting Zim more than once that we're going to share with you. And just a reminder, if you want to pick out a particular experience you've had, you could do what Sharon has sent and send us a voice note on 072 567 1567. Let's take a listen.
Hello, talking about Zimbabwe and Victoria Falls and everything else. I'm originally from Zimbabwe and I go up quite regularly. And the one year we took a trip from Harare to Victoria Falls with my daughters, and there were some American tourists on the same flight. And we were on a little taxi going into the city centre after arriving. And we said, so what do you think of Zimbabwe so far? They'd been telling us how many countries they had visited. And they said, no, they haven't been to Zimbabwe yet. We're just going to Victoria Falls. So they didn't even know that they were in Zimbabwe, which was quite enlightening. The other thing I've just come back from is a trip down the Zambezi. I did that from the Zambian side. Mm-hmm. And we spent 3 days sleeping under the stars and traveling down the Zambezi. And that was magical.
Lucky you, Sharon. Thanks for the humour on the American tourists. But, what a wonderful experience of the Zambezi. Jeff calling in the background asking, do you need a 4x4 or even a 2x4 if you are going to self-drive, or will a normal car crack it?
I would take a car with clearance and preferably a 4x4. It's not like you need 4x4, but you need the clearance because of the condition of some of the roads.
Okay. So do bear that in mind, or perhaps consider then an option to. Is it relatively easy for a South African to hire a car? So if you wanted to say fly into Harare and then self-drive from there,
yes.
Can that be?
It's very easy to be able to do that. Yeah, with fully kitted out vehicles, it's quite easy.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to mention that we haven't spoken about? I haven't asked you about that is worth, whether it's a little known destination or just a tip for anybody who's planning a holiday to Zim?
I would plan well in advance, especially in season. Of course, exactly like with the Americans talking about, they're thinking Vic Falls is not part of Zimbabwe. I think a lot of people suffer from that and don't ignore the rest of Zimbabwe. I think it's an incredible, if you're adventurous. I mean, something I actually did with some friends in October last year. We pioneered a walk between Nanchwich, which is on the west side of northern Wangi, and Bambuzi, both of our camps, and it's along the Decker River. And we walked every day between 6 a.m. and midday. One of the best things I've ever done. When I say you don't see proof of humans on this trail, you don't. We didn't see another human footprint, and you certainly don't even see a Coke bottle or a can along the river or anything like that. But, we walked onto cats every day. So lions, we even were lucky to have a nice male leopard one day, and then all the other wildlife. It's
on foot.
It really is a phenomenal experience. We've now actually launched that as a product, and just being able to go for a week, and you go with your family or a bunch of friends, and being able to do a trail from one area to the next, and you just immersed, obviously with pro guides who armed and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of experience, and it's not just in Wangi. You can do that in Matusadonna. You can do that in Mana Pools as well. To get that true wilderness experience where there's no fences and you're in the wild, you can detox from Wi-Fi and the whole world outside of you.
Sounds amazing. Diane in Pinelands writing in to say, my husband and I spent 3 months long ago in 1970 traveling through Zim. The best trip ever. It is the most beautiful and diverse country, from Vic Falls to Wangi, Motopos, Kariba, Nchanga Mountains, Vumba. The Great Zimbabwe ruins far surpass Stonehenge in Diane's opinion. She says, we loved every part of it. I was fortunate enough to go back to the falls around 2006, and it hasn't lost its magic. It's a country that must be visited. Diane, lucky you, and thanks for that reminder. Final question then, Garth. If it must be visited, how can we get there with Jenman African Safaris? If somebody wants to take a look at your camps or find out about those products you're talking about, website, social media, what's the best place to go?
On Jenman Safaris, our holding company, you can easily find us. You can just Google us. There's very good reviews out there on us. And then Hideaways Africa, once again as well, if you Google that, that's our lodges and camps in Zimbabwe as well as in Botswana. Our offices are here in Claremont. We've got very well-trained and experienced staff. So you can contact us and we can assist with any kind, whether we do a lot of self-drives. So any standard that you're looking for, and we're very au fait with everything Zimbabwe. Our offices basically should be in Zimbabwe. That's how much
they're just here in Cape Town.
Yeah,
Listen, I think you better get some extra staff on the phones after the job you've done selling the destination, Garth. Real pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks for a wonderful conversation, and you've made me want to visit. I'm sure many others feeling the same way. So great to have you with us today.
Thanks very much for your time.
Huge
Pippa.
pleasure.
Thanks
Garth
very much.
Jenman, the founder of Jenman African Safaris.